I'm going to walk through this FM broadcast transmitter the way most of you need. No hype, just the kind of detail that helps you decide if spending a few $1,000s on a 1 kilowatt unit is worth it for your specific situation. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're looking at something that promises a 25-30 kilometer coverage radius, the first thing that worries most buyers is whether the signal will actually reach that far in real-world terrain, and whether you'll end up paying for power you never use. I spent the last few days reading through the tech forums where community radio operators and churches share their setups, and I also dug into a handful of product spec sheets to see what hidden trade-offs might be lurking behind the headline numbers. Let's start with the basic premise. A 1 kilowatt FM transmitter is designed for anyone who needs a reliable, long-range signal without pulling a commercial-grade tower. That typically means small to medium community radio stations, churches that want to broadcast services across a town, or hobbyists who run a local pirate FM station for a neighborhood. If you're a single-person podcaster who only needs an internet stream, this is overkill. The transmitter's 2,530 kilometers radius is real, but it assumes a relatively clear line of sight and a decent antenna system. In a hilly or heavily built-up area, you'll see that range shrink noticeably. You might get 15 kilometers in practice, which is still decent, but not the advertised max. One of the practical strengths that shows up when you actually hook this thing up is the built-in security protection. Overheat protection and over SWR, standing wave ratio, detection are crucial when you're running a high-power unit 24/7. In the field, I've heard operators talk about transmitters that simply shut down without warning, leaving a dead air gap that can cost you listeners. This YCZHI model flashes an alert on its LCD screen and throttles back power before anything catastrophic happens. That gives you peace of mind if you don't have a dedicated engineer on standby. Another real-world advantage is the LCD interface. It's not just a pretty display. It actually lets you switch channels, monitor power output, and see the protection status at a glance. For a non-technical user, say a church media team that rotates the broadcast frequency a few times a year, the menu system is intuitive enough that you won't need a manual on standby. The downside is that the screen is relatively small and can be hard to read in bright sunlight, so you'll probably want to set it up in a shaded rack or use a remote monitoring solution if you need to keep an eye on it from a control room. Compatibility is another factor that often trips up buyers. The transmitter claims to work with most smartphones, which basically means it accepts a standard line-level audio input. In practice, that means you can feed the mix from a digital audio console, a laptop running a streaming app, or even a simple Bluetooth receiver that outputs to a 3.5mm jack. I tested it with a basic USB audio interface and a small mixing board, and the audio stayed clean with no noticeable distortion at full power. However, the unit does not have built-in audio processing like a compressor or limiter, so you need to handle that upstream. If your source material has occasional peaks, those could translate into unwanted splatter on the FM carrier when you push the transmitter to its full 1 kilowatt output. Now, who should actually consider buying this? First, community broadcasters who already have a licensed FM frequency and an appropriate antenna tower will find the value in the high power and the long warranty. The 6-year warranty is unusually generous for equipment at this price point, and it suggests the manufacturer expects the unit to be a long-term fixture. Second, churches that want to reach a wide parish area without investing in a full-blown commercial transmitter will appreciate the blend of power and protective features. Finally, hobbyists who already own a decent antenna and are comfortable handling RF safety guidelines can get a lot of mileage out of this machine without breaking the bank. Who should walk away? If you're still figuring out whether you need an FM license, or if you're only interested in streaming online, this is the wrong tool. You'll be paying for a lot of unused capacity. Likewise, anyone without a proper antenna system, like a simple dipole on a balcony, will not see the promised 30 kilometers range, and they'll waste power while potentially causing interference. Also, if you lack the technical confidence to monitor SWR and maintain the antenna tuning, the protection circuitry can only do so much. You could still end up with poor signal quality or, in the worst case, damage to the transmitter if you ignore the alerts. From a value perspective, the headline 1 kilowatt power is only part of the story. The real money saver is the built-in protection suite and the 6-year warranty. which together reduce the risk of expensive downtime. In contrast, cheaper transmitters often skip those safety features, leaving you with a device that may burn out after a few months of